I can't think of any kind of pop musician, rock star type who would do an interview or talk to people about what it took to learn music. They might say how hard it was to tour, but they wouldn't say like that they practice scales, arpeggios, that they have teachers that they had appreciated. Had they screwed up a lot, like in ways that, like, not like, you know, cool ways like they're on drugs, but like had made bad decisions or felt bad about themselves. I just want to know those things when I was growing up. So the book is for those. It's also for, I think, most people who are creative or are some kind of artist in some way, but don't do it for a living, because we kind of make it that that's, you're only real if you make money at it or you're famous at it. And like I point out in the last chapter, you know, Charles Ives, one of our greatest innovators, was a composer from early 20th century, American composer. He was an insurance man. That's what he did. So he went home at night and innovated American music, by the way. And probably able to do it because he was an amateur. Because he didn't have to kiss ass like I did. So I think it's important for me to have written a book by a creative person, I think, to other creative people who do all kinds of things for a living, not just do music and shake their ass on TV in tight leather pants like I do. So, time to grow up. Wait, what? Again? Because I've showed all these times where I think that I've grown up, it wasn't true. And unfortunately, we're now into my 40s in the book, which is I've never found growing up to be straight and linear. In my case, anyway, it's been quite a zigzag, fixing one hole and then springing another leak somewhere else. I've been reading like facts and figures on Iowa Arts Today. My brain's fucked. $4 billion a year towards your economy, 42,000 jobs in the arts, 2.3 of your GDP. I'm going to flush out of the back of my brain. Learn to read again. In my case anyway, it's been quite a zigzag, fixing one hole and then springing another leak somewhere else. Overcorrecting from the ditch on one side of the road, only to find myself crashed in the opposite. I had dialed back my touring some in 2002 after my pneumonia, but rather than actually slowing down, I had filled my schedule with more work. I built a studio from the ground up, and by the end of that year, 2003, I had written and recorded 4 separate studio EPs, 3 of my own, which all debuted at #1 on iTunes, before iTunes was a big deal, and one with Ben Lee and Ben Queller called Ben's. As the lesson of my invincibility faded, which was, I have a chapter called Invincibility where I realized that I wasn't invincible anymore, because I did one of those like behind the music VH1 pass out right side of the stage and had to be carried home basically. I got cocky again in 2004 and slipped back into my habit of heavy touring while maintaining the pace of studio work. There was of course Has Been with Shatner, which had been a massive undertaking, writing the music, producing the recording, and flying in new guests every day. Before taking a breath, I undertook a complete reimagining of my catalog for the release of Ben Folds and Owasso Live in Perth, the West Australian Orchestra. I still managed to get together another full-length studio album, Songs for Silverman, released by 2005. Unwilling to miss out on my twins' childhood, I found myself manically running back and forth from studio to home or school. Or I'd take them with me to studio or on tour, the way my parents would drag me to the construction sites they worked on. Their presence, despite the challenge of fitting parenthood into a rock career, is probably what kept me sane. And here's lines from Gracie, the song. You nodded off in my arms watching TV. I won't move you an inch even though my arm's asleep. From Gracie, Songs for Silverman, 2005. To add to the mix, just because, I spend an average morning from 5 a.m. to noon in a dark room making countless prints before my late nights in the studio. So you can see a workaholic going on here. This is all doable if you just cut some sleep in half. The pace continued through 2007 as I unsurprisingly found myself heading for another divorce and hopping on the tour bus that summer to support John Mayer. I was supposed to be the adult on the John Mayer tour. In terms of years at least, I was the elder statesman. But as I stretched myself thin with work, my life outside of work paid the price, and my typical symptoms once again surfaced. The childish "what the fuck is he doing now" on stage antics, along with the physical and nervous system breakdowns, which I sort of talked about earlier. A quick Google search, like I've just done at the time of the writing, turns up articles about the Continuum Tour 2007 that pretty well paint the picture. Quote, Folds was profane. Folds told tall tales. He outraged parents. He dropped his pants and flipped off the audience. Yep, that's how I remember it too. I first met John in the late 90s when he was just some kid at Berklee College of Music who was bootlegging Ben Folds 5 concerts and selling them online. My manager, Alan, noticed he was selling these recordings of our shows online and wanted to bust his ass for profiting off our music. Alan often warned of the peril ahead in the new frontier of digital music distribution, and he was ready to make an example of someone. But I told Alan to call off the dogs, leave the kid alone. This is John Mayer back in college. I didn't see anything wrong with someone being excited about our music and sharing it with others. I didn't think about this John Mayer for a couple of years, and then he popped up backstage at a solo show of mine in Athens, Georgia in 2000. Soon after, as Weird Al Yankovic and I were filming the video for the song "Rock in the Suburbs," there was John Mayer again, just hanging around, I guess, to see how it was done. 7 years, millions of records, a handful of Grammys, and countless tabloid covers later, he had pretty well figured out how it was done. Turns out this kid was absolutely brilliant guitarist and songwriter. And so now we were touring together, a newly world famous John Mayer, taking out the old dude he looked up to when he was younger. John's tour was much more of a mainstream affair than I was accustomed to, and I was definitely causing problems. But the biggest problem was one particular song, which was becoming a very successful single for me. I don't mean landed from Songs for Silverman, the single that had been released and highly promoted by Sony. I mean its B-side, Bitches Ain't Shit, which had spread by word of mouth and was now doubling my audience. Its title is the cleanest part of the song. You may know Dr. Dre, the Dr. Dre original from The Chronic. I just added pretty chords and one of my best melodies, and it became a thing. Since I was in college, I'd always wanted to make a melody to the song "I Can't Do Nothing For You, Man" by Public Enemy. I loved that song and wanted to hear it on the piano. But when I sat down and actually tried to work on it, I found it too symmetrical for a good melody. It had too much of a Cat in the Hat vibe to sound serious with sad chords. Needing a B-side at that moment, like that moment, I searched my record collection in the studio for another spoken or rapped song that might be less iambic pentameter driven. I wanted a little less symmetry in the words. So I could experiment with music that meant highlight a different side of the lyric. And there, glowing out of my stack of records, was Dr. Dre's classic. I'd always thought the lyrics of "Bitches Ain't Shit" painted a sad picture, or rather, the part that I chose to excerpt skewed sad. I actually didn't use the entirety of the lyric. I decided to concentrate on the parts where the main character is released from prison and is excited to see his girlfriend, only to discover her having sex with his cousin on the floor. It's like a sad Johnny Cash song with a lot more vulgarity. Slowing these words down from the gangster rap presentation, an added melody creates an absurd effect, both funny and sad. Sung this way, the misogyny in the original lyrics, no matter how wrong, could be explained by how badly the narrator was hurt. He's lashing out. I consider the melody for "Bitches Ain't Shit" to be as good as any melody I've written. It's no throwaway. It was a joke only to the extent that the comedy I loved from the 70s was a joke. It was based on something real. "Bitches Ain't Shit" in ballad form was expanding my audiences much like Brick had done for Ben Folds 5 a decade before. I can't say I was completely thrilled with this new demographic, but that's the way it is with the hits. The song brought in more drunken college boys with ironic, I guess, backward baseball caps, and YouTube was full of children lip syncing along to this vulgar song, to my melody. Something I wasn't expecting. I can't say I was comfortable with all this. In fact, the song never got easier for me to sing. It always felt so wrong. But then that was also part of what made it interesting. At the time of the John Mayer tour, this crude and melancholy tune was undoubtedly my hit. And when you're on tour with a major recording artist, you must play the hit. Needless to say, Bitches Ain't Shit wasn't well received at John Mayer's general audience's radio concerts. The song, which I sang completely earnestly, got me booed regularly. And in response to that, my inner punk took over, and I began flipping off the audience with one hand while playing with the other. 30-something parents with respectable jobs had brought their children to this concert for an evening of polite rock, not to hear a foul-mouthed pianist as he gave them the finger. As they hissed and hollered in disgust, covering their children's ears, I would finish the song pretending to be flustered by the negative response. People, I'm sorry. I'm here to have a good time. I don't understand why all the booing straight out of Kaufman more than straight out of Compton. That's just rude of you. I'm so nervous now. All this bad energy, all the bad vibes. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry I upset you. But you can see my children, they're just off stage. My kids, my twins, right over there. Do you think they want to witness their father being booed like this? Never mind that they just witnessed their father singing about dick sucking. There would be a palpable forgiveness in the air. They weren't cruel on us. I'm a little lost now. I would pause and then continue. Let me just look at the set list. I don't even know where I am now or what I just played. Okay, I don't think I played this one. I have to say your booing's really throwing me off. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the next song is called Bitches Ain't Shit. The audience groaned. Then I played it again. All the way through. Sometimes even slower, savoring every word. I often told them to sing along, or I'd play it again. Which I did on a couple of occasions. Twice. Sometimes I'd break their will and the booing would stop. And if you would even indulge in sing-along, they must have thought that if this is what it would take to shut me up, then fine. Would you please just not play that song? Michael McDonald, not the singer, but John's manager, asked me after being pummeled with the audience complaints. We had a very earnest, long conversation about it on the tour bus. I told Michael that he was asking me not to play something my audience expected me to play. Further, I pointed out that Michael and I had toured together before, and he was surely aware of the kind of language I used at my shows before this tour was booked. No, Michael, I said, this is censorship. No, Michael, I said, this is censorship. And I stuck with that line. I told him that I wouldn't hold a grudge if he fired me. But he knew John wanted me on the tour, so I was kept on. It probably was unfair of me to be so stubborn, but I was the child that year, at least on stage. Off stage, I was buried in grown-up problems, many springing from what was shaping up as an awful divorce, if in fact there's such thing as a good divorce. The legal and financial issues of divorce can certainly take their toll, especially when you're trying to keep the children safe and stable through the mess you've created. I was filled with dread the entire waking day, except when I was on stage. My ears rang from high blood pressure most mornings. I often wished I'd just go to sleep and never wake up, but sleep itself was rare, and I endured bouts of a condition called restless leg syndrome. Anyone has that, it sucks. Involving a sensation in your legs and lower back that gives you the overwhelming urge to jump out of bed and sprint. It's awful and I was in agony. RLS is something I've often had during periods of high stress. Maybe I should have tended to myself rather than going out on tour. But here I was, on the move, city to city, with voicemail and inboxes full of drama. A disaster of my own making, indeed. We all encounter rough patches, and we each find a way to power through. Luckily, I could still have a laugh, something that's gotten me through my toughest chapters. But these were times that made me wonder how much longer I could even hang on to that. How about you work with me on this, Michael asked. And just don't play that nasty song twice. Can you do that much? Just don't play it twice, please. I agreed. I would not play it twice. And that night, as I passed him going on for my set, he kindly reminded me, not twice, right? I assured him again, I won't play it twice, Mike. And I turned around to him, nearly seated at my piano, and I mouthed, thrice, holding up 3 fingers. He had forgotten to say anything about playing it 3 times. These days, I've stopped playing Bitches Ain't Shit, and I ignore requests for it. Music should work to ease social tensions, not throw gasoline on the fire, even inadvertently. I don't want non-white people in my audience subjected to large numbers of white people gleefully singing a racial slur. That had never been the point. We had our Dr. Dre moment. Moving on. My most childish episode during that tour was in Indianapolis, one of the biggest shows on the tour, and it had nothing to do with Dr. Dre. Before an audience of 10,000 devoted John Mayer fans, I spent my whole 45-minute set meticulously developing a huge, absurd whopper of a story. In banter between songs, I made myself out to be the son of some mystery famous songwriter whose career had tragically ended on the very stage on which I performed that evening. For much of the set, I didn't let on whose son that was. I spoke as if they were, of course, supposed to know who my dad was.
Oh my God.
Early on in the set, I said things like, this next song was the first record that ever sold as many copies as my father's biggest hit. Or, I never wanted to be compared to my old man. I wanted to be my own songwriter, but this one is a nod to my father's style. No one in the audience seemed to know who I was anyway, so I figured I was free to spin tales with impunity. I set it all up so that near the last song, I could tell a story that went something like this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is, as many of you know, a very emotional show for me. Oh, the mystery. I was 8 years old last time I was here, sitting right over there, just off stage, watching my dad. It was one of those nights, and I knew how he could be when his drinking started. I knew something was going to happen that night. Everyone did. I know some of you are old enough to know what happened, right? There was a muted and confused response, but I had their attention. And I continued. It changed my life. It changed his life. And it changed the life of the woman who lost her sight in the incident. It's painful, but I will recount what followed for those who don't know. My father, of course, was the lead singer of 38 Special. The crowd went fucking This is in Indianapolis. And that night, the last night he took the stage, he's been touring ever since. That night, the last night he took the stage, ended his career in shame. Someone in the audience, right front row, as many of you will remember, had thrown a whiskey bottle at my father, who was slur singing out of tune. Dad picked up the bottle and threw it as hard as he could, missed the guy who'd thrown it at him, but blinded his girlfriend. The audience gasped, of course. But he's spent his life being sorry. He's done wonderful things for those people, and they've forgiven him. She has her eyesight back because my dad spent every last penny on that experimental surgery. And here she is last night, friends, with my mom. In fact, they're just off stage together. Hi, Mom. Hi, Lisa. Applause for Mom. And Dad, he's here tonight. Thunderous applause. And I talked to him into coming out here on stage for everyone to see. It's about healing. Dad, you want to come out? On cue, my stepmother then rolled my father, who was on tour with me at the moment, out in a wheelchair.
Oh my God.
Why did it need to be a wheelchair? I don't know. It just seemed comically sadder, as if something about the tragedy had rendered Papa unable to walk. I'd seen the wheelchair sitting unused backstage when I was cooking up this whole scene prior to the show. Papa hadn't been so sure he'd wanted to be involved in the scheme. But my then 7-year-old daughter had been very excited about seeing her grandfather on stage. She talked him into it. Granddaughters have their granddads wrapped around their pinkies, as you know. So Papa was rolled out on stage with the local crew helping him lift him over various cables. Those in the seated section rose to their feet at the sight.
Oh my God.
The band swears there were tears in the audience. I didn't see that. I was too busy taking in the beauty of my father's form as he so artfully and painfully struggled to raise one fist in the air. He milked it. When he had accomplished the feat of nearly extending his quivering arm, the place went nuts. There was no roof to blow off the motherfucker. It was outside. No Dean Foles blew the sky off the motherfucker. Our last song, God Knows or Even Cares What It was massive. It was my first actual positive response to the summer tour. As we exited the stage, my tour manager anxiously announced, "Everyone stuff on the bus. There's press that wants to talk to you about this, and I can't let them talk to you. Move quickly to the bus. Let's get the fuck out." And we took off. The next day in catering in the next city, John made a beeline to me. "John Mayer, please tell me at least that was your real father." I nodded yes, sinking into my chair like a scolded child. John shook his head like a disappointed dad and went to the catering line. It seems that at 40, I was still getting paid to throw childish tantrums and mitigate my anxiety on stage. Who else gets to do that?